Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my incredibly entitled racist neighbor does not like the fact that I am married to a white guy. She despises us even more when I give birth to a white baby. She demands that I must let her raise the kid, and she ends up trying to kidnap my baby. She then wants me arrested when police arrive at the scene. Here is what happened. The first one starts like this. I have seen Karens try to steal cars. I have seen Karens try and steal homes. However, what I never thought I would see was a Karen trying to steal a baby. More importantly, my baby. As you can tell, this was not a generic Karen in the wild, but instead one that lives about 2 doors down from me. Now, I've had issues with this Karen since the beginning of knowing her, and it all boils down to the fact that she is insane and racist. So for context, I'm a black woman who is married to a white man. That simple statement is the main issue between me and Karen because she thinks that's a problem. We've had issues with her telling me that I don't belong in the neighborhood because of the color of my skin and that it will ruin property values if she ever tries to sell her house. She really does have no issue being that racist directly to my face, and each time I call her out for it and tell her to get away from me. At one point, she even approached my husband telling him that she had a lot of single friends and that he should divorce me and marry one of them instead. Of course, all of these women being white and probably just as entitled and witchy if they were friends with this Karen. He also hates her and cannot believe the kind of crap that she will say right to our faces. Once she could visibly see that I was pregnant, and you can imagine that she had a ton to say about that as well. I could be here all day typing about the racist crap she says, so I will just move on a little to after my baby was born. For people that don't know, most babies come out light-skinned and can darken over time. My son looked exactly like his father and was the palest little thing. Of course, to us that did not matter because he was healthy, and I was honestly glad to have him out after 9 months of being pregnant. Having him also did one other thing to me, which was giving me motherly instincts of not dealing with anybody's crap when it came to my son. And of course, the day I take him for a walk in his stroller, I run into racist crazy Karen, who of course has to stop and take a look at my son. Karen, wow, he is so white. Are you sure that he's really yours? Me, considering I was pregnant for 9 months, I can guarantee he's mine. Karen, I would have expected him to be black like you. I mean, he will fit in now a lot better when he goes to school around here since he is white. Me, he's not white, he's half black. He just looked like his dad. Karen, how can you expect to raise a white child though? He will grow up thinking you're a nanny or something and want his real mom. You should just let me raise him. Me? Excuse me? Did you say what I just think you did? Karen, he deserves a white mother. The only thing he will learn from you is how to leech off of the government and end up in jail. Me, get your racist ass away from me and my baby. I'm sick of your BS and I don't want you talking to me or my husband ever again. Hearing her tell me to give her my child made me snap, and I was no longer gonna deal with her BS. The yelling sadly woke up my son, who was napping and now is screaming and probably wanting to eat. She took this as an opportunity to decide that I'm a bad mother because of course a baby crying must mean that I'm a bad mother. She shoved me to the side before grabbing the stroller and trying to run away with my baby. She made it about a house and a half before I caught up with her and punched her right onto the pavement. I lost any and all control as I was running on emotions and hormones of a new mother who just had her baby grabbed away from her. I was kicking her on the ground too until I knew she was not about to get up and grab my baby again. I was also screaming at the top of my lungs since she grabbed the stroller, so I assumed that somebody heard because the cops showed up pretty quickly after that. At this point, I was a hysterical mess and clinging to my baby in fear of him being grabbed again. The police separated me from Karen as they tried to get the story out of a sobbing me of what went wrong. I told them what she said and that she demanded I give her my baby because he is white. Then when I refused, she grabbed the stroller and tried to just take him. I flat out admitted that I was the one that knocked her to the ground after I caught up with her. The officers were really nice and trying to calm me down, and even offered to call my husband for me since I was too much of a mess to even do that on my own. Looking back, I think I was also scared because I know that I don't look like my son and certain that police might have not believed me. Very easily, Karen could have claimed it to be her kid and some officers might have taken her side. I'm lucky that nothing like that happened, but looking back at it, it's really a scary thought. Karen was up after a couple of minutes and I could see her ranting and pointing at me and the baby. I did not learn until a little later what her side of the story was, but I'll share it with you guys now. She claimed that at the hospital I must have switched my baby with another one that really did belong to my husband. That there was no way my son really was mine and that I had no business raising him. That he needed a white mother and she was willing to take care of that role and asked the police to place the baby in her care. Of course, she got told that that was not how anything worked and she was the one actually in trouble. I think she was shocked and assumed she didn't do anything wrong and I would be the one getting arrested. Claiming that I assaulted her for no reason or, according to her, because black people are just violent. That she wanted me arrested for assault and thrown in jail with my baby taken out of my care and put into hers. She must have not liked it when her reality was shattered with how laws actually work. She was being arrested for attempted kidnapping and you can bet that I was gonna press charges on this Karen. What I did was labeled by the police as self-defense and defending my baby, so I was not getting in any trouble with them. I also wanted a restraining order against Karen because I feared of her going after me and trying to take my son away again. Of course, my husband was also insistent on making sure that Karen stayed far away from us and the police promised they would do everything they could. She did not end up in jail and was back to her house by the next day. However, a restraining order was filed that said she wasn't allowed to go anywhere near us or our child. She was also given some pretty heavy probation and rules since her crime involved a minor. She was not allowed near parks or any kid places because she was considered a risk to kidnapping kids after what she did. She was of course pissed about this and tried to contact us to get rid of the restraining order and help her get the restrictions lifted. But of course we said no and for her to not contact us or we would go to the police again. Messing with me and being a racist crosses a line that I cannot stand. Once you get my baby involved though, it crosses an entirely different line where I won't rest until you get exactly what you deserve. Karen had to learn this the hard way and I hope doesn't need to see what happens if she tries to go anywhere near my baby again. Update to the story. It's been a few weeks since the terrifying incident that shook me to the core. It was the kind of experience that would stay with me for a long time, if not forever. Honestly, I had never thought that I would be put in such a precarious situation. I had always thought that I was someone who could handle herself, but when it came to my child, my maternal instincts kicked in and I knew that I would do anything to protect my kid from harm. Karen's actions had made me realize just how important my family was to me and how much I would go to any length to keep them safe. The days that followed Karen's attempt to kidnap my kid were filled with fear and uncertainty. I was always looking over my shoulder, always on high alert and always expecting the worst. It was a trying time to say the least. However, a few days ago I received a call from the local police department and it was the best news I had heard in a long time. They informed me that Karen had violated the terms of her probation and was being taken into custody. I felt a sense of relief that justice had been served and that my family could finally have some peace. As the police officer on the other end of the line relayed the details, I could not help but feel a sense of vindication. It was clear that Karen had not learned her lesson and was still a danger to society. Her delusional behavior had led her to attempt to break into a local daycare center, and her excuse was that she was looking for a kid that she had been assigned to take care for. It was clear that she was mentally unstable and needed to be behind bars. As I hung up the phone, I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, Karen was gonna pay for her crimes and would be behind bars where she could not hurt anyone else. It was a small victory, but one that I'd been hoping for since the day she tried to take my baby. The incident with Karen had taught me a lot about myself and about the strength and resilience of the human spirit. It had shown me that even in the darkest moments we can find the courage to fight back, to stand up for what is right and to protect the ones we love. Looking down at my son who was happily playing on the floor, I felt a sense of gratitude and relief. With Karen now out of the picture, I could finally focus on being the best mother I could be, without the constant threat of her racist and violent behavior hanging over our heads. I knew that there would always be challenges in life, but I was determined to face them head on. Karen might have caused chaos and pain in our lives, but she had also shown me just how strong I could be and had just how much I was willing to fight for what was right. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am very happy for OP that Karen is basically now out of the picture and finally got what she deserved. I could not imagine being in OP's shoes and living next to a neighbor like this. That's why I am so happy for the outcome. And I'm also very happy that nothing too serious happened at the daycare. Anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and maybe even post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled Office Revenge. I got a job, basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 AM and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 PM person arrived. Most of the time I read, watch TV or play games on my laptop. I probably worked no more than 10 minutes of every hour unless something went wrong. It went on like this for years, the pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was gonna become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 PM that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 PM, did the normal things, and then left at 12 AM when my relief arrived. It was a little more work, more call volumes, etc., and then after 9 months things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total Karen. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time a system jammed up at a remote site and she called them. 5 hours later I saw the jam was still there, so I called that site again to see if they were still working on it or if something else was wrong, because the woman on our end would be the one to help them was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday, just after having left work? I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them, things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I tiptoed around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact that I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did the stupid highlighting thing and my log entries started getting more and more detailed. I was even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The firing the following summer, just after I crossed the year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task which involved certain updates. I explained to him how I did it and so forth, and he then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the data code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyway, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me, so I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means that I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason as well. The only exceptions were state and federal laws such as race, religion, etc. I thought I was screwed. So I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounded good, but it resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. However, their fancy high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by courts. This side cited a case from the state Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they have to have a real reason to fire me. The revenge with that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about his program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my computer and laptop and I experimented. The date of the file which they tried to use against me is baked into the version 2. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would in reality display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's side broke the script then. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who had wrote it retired. The fix involved deleting 3 characters on one line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not done on weekends or holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law they broke and all the evidence I had collected, they were forced to settle with me. So in the end their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework, but I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I've known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. Edit, obviously the terms of the settlement are confidential and as far as I know still in effect. It was a good portion of my salary though. I also got unemployment during this time as well. I never found out how the reaction went down as the main corporate office that would have dealt with it was in another state and I never had any contact with those people. I imagine a new handbook was issued before they cut my check though, so I feel bad for those who remained. Karen's fate was sealed about a year later. I saw a Facebook post by a former coworker mentioning that his job with them had ended, so I asked for details. The company experienced a huge loss in revenue. As a result, Karen lost her job as the site I had worked in was closed. Of about the 50 of us that worked in that office, only 10 or so were moved to another location. Thankfully, most of the ones I liked were old enough to retire. It did not take a genius to realize that my termination was simply a layoff disguised as a firing. And yeah, ripe stars, I hope that stupid boss of that company learned a lesson for unfairly terminating/firing OP. And by the way guys, I'm curious, have you ever been unfairly terminated at your job? And if so, did you fight it in some way or another? Let us know about your story, I'm very curious. I have met a few entitled people in my life and have a few stories of them. This particular one happened in 2010. I was a 20-year-old guy who just moved into my first apartment and I was ready to try and take the world by storm by sitting on my ass playing Halo when I was not at work. I rented a small 1-bedroom ground-level apartment and after 3 months or so of living there, a girl moved in next door that I will call Barbie because she looked a lot like one of those dolls. Now, this girl looked almost like a model. She was around 5'8" and made herself look even taller with some platform high heels that she wore most of the time. She had long blonde hair and some curves that made her pretty damn hot. And she knew it. What I wondered was, why was she bothering to live in the crappy apartment complex we were both in? The rent was cheap, but the neighborhood kind of sucked. This girl seemed pretty out of place. Her car looked like a relatively new red hatchback of the time, don't remember what brand though, and she was always dressed in what looked like expensive clothing. She also watched the first Twilight movie a lot on high volume. It drove me nuts sometimes. Thank God for headphones. The thing is that I had no idea what this girl did for a living. She looked about the same age as me, but she only came and went at her leisure. Several months went by and I suddenly heard her cursing up a storm one weekend morning. She was yelling at someone over the phone about her power being shut off and I did not want to get involved. But she came knocking on my door and then asked me to let her come in because her power was out and now she had no AC. I was dumb enough to let her in. The first thing she did was gripe that I was messy and my apartment smelled like a man. Well yeah, I was a 20-year-old bachelor enjoying his freedom from a controlling mom and a dad who was more focused on my older brother. Barbie sat her butt down on my couch and immediately changed the channel on my TV and then complained that I only had basic cable. Then she wanted a bottled water. I said I had soda, that was it. I'm a Pepsi drinker, always been, but she complained it was not something like Sprite. I think that was when she finally could tell how annoyed I was, because she put down my TV remote and gave a mild apology. Probably because she did not want to be back out in that heat. It is not uncommon for the temperature to easily go over 100 degrees here, and it is a warm state year round. I put my video game I was playing back on my TV and then told Barbie that if she was going to hang around, then she had better leave my stuff alone. She looked offended and then grabbed a nearby folding chair I had to sit near the air conditioner with it. I put on my headphones to keep from having to listen to her because she was on her phone again yelling at someone over her electricity. Eventually, after a few hours she left, but she was back the next day after I got home from work. And she was coming over regularly now, begging me to hang around so she could be in an air-conditioned apartment. And she repeatedly asked to use my shower. Then one day I came home to hear the power back on in her apartment. I figured she had gotten her problems straightened out, but nope. It turns out she ran a power cord from my apartment to hers through the windows. She tripped the breaker and I noticed that the sound of her TV shut off when the breaker tripped. I turned the breaker back on and her TV came back to life after a moment. That is when I decided to look around and found the power cord she was using. God knows how many things she had hooked up to that one cord. Our apartments were both ground level, so she likely got in through my window because either I accidentally left it unlocked or she unlocked it while she was hanging around my place. However, the window could not close all the way and the orange cord was pretty easy to spot once I looked for it. I thought about unplugging it, but I decided to call my landlord instead. They sent over the apartment manager and I showed her what Barbie had done. I pulled the power cord that Barbie had run through my window and we both heard Barbie curse as her power shut off again. Then I plugged it back in to wait for her to turn her TV back on. Then I unplugged it one last time and threw the cord out of the window and locked it. The apartment manager and I knocked on Barbie's door, and when she answered, I said that I just unplugged her apartment from mine. She said something about how that was not neighborly of me, but the apartment manager chimed in and said what she did was stealing electricity. Barbie slammed the door on us both before we could get another word in. Barbie did not stop though. She took that cord and ran it over to a house that was next door to the apartment complex and right behind our apartments. The neighbor found the cord and not only unplugged it but cut it apart too. Barbie ended up going over there and getting into a huge fight with them about the cord. After a while, the apartment manager came to see her with an eviction notice. Apparently, she only ever paid her first month's rent and then nothing else. And I guess she was not paying her bills either, which is why her water and power had been shut off after a few months. I heard her get on the phone repeatedly and was shrieking at somebody. Words I distinctly remember hearing her say was, "You were supposed to be the one to pay. That's why I was sleeping with you. I'm not going to pay. I'm too pretty for that." Barbie left the apartment after about a week and I never saw her again. Some other girl moved in next door and we hit it off dating for a while. However, it did not go anywhere. I still get a laugh though when I remember hearing Barbie saying she was too pretty to pay. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.